How does the Quran expose the fraud of Muhammad? All right, lie number one. The Quran lies to Muhammad and says, never did we send a messenger or a prophet before you, but when he did recite the revelation or narrated or spoke, Shaitan, Muhammad's father, threw some falsehood in it. Now I'm going to give you the historical background of this. It's called the Satanic Verses. A huge embarrassment for Muslims who try to lie and say this never happened. However, a Muslim scholar who died not too long ago spent considerable amount of time carefully sifting and examining every single narration he could find on the Satanic Verses, and he did a PhD on it and on what Ibn Taymiyyah said, and wrote a book, a must-have book. Now, by the way, brother, if you can get a hold of that book, send it to me, bro. It's by, what was his name? I quote him at length in my articles. He was a Muslim. He documents there are over 30 reports, many of them deemed to be what's called Sahih Mursal. You ready to learn? That show that the earliest version of the story was that when Muhammad recited Surah An-Najm, chapter 53, verses 19 and 20, where the three daughters of Allah are mentioned, Manat, Allah, right? Allat, Al-Uzza, Manat, the third, the other. That Muhammad originally said, listen to this, originally said, these are high-flying cranes whose intercession is to be sought after. Let me explain the background, guys. Muhammad praised the pagan goddesses worshipped by the pagan Arabs and acknowledged they exist and they intercede for the pagans. The earliest sources, earliest versions say Muhammad recited the verses because Satan deceived him into thinking these verses came from Gabriel, and he recited them thinking they're from Gabriel. It says all the pagans were in awe and exclaimed, Muhammad has praised our goddesses. They bowed with him in worship and accepted his religion because he acknowledged their goddesses. Huge embarrassment. Okay, are you listening to the historical background? Now remember, this Muslim scholar documented over 30, more like 50 sources. And the earliest sources, because as time went on, the story changed and became embellished and elaborated. But he documents that the earliest version of the story, and many of them come from Sahih chains, meaning from people in the chain deemed to be reliable, trustworthy, but they're called Sahih Mursal chains, which some scholars accept. The original version is Satan inspired Muhammad to recite these verses without Muhammad realizing they're from Satan. Gabriel came, rebuked him. Muhammad felt guilty and embarrassed, and then recanted and changed the verses, and the pagans became more upset at him. Okay, you understand the gist of the story? Do you know who defended the historicity of the story and said that there are too many chains, too many versions of the story for it to be fake? This is known as the Satanic Verses. Even David Wood did an excellent debate on this with Adnan Rashid, which you can find. And David Wood went through the sources. In my estimation, David Wood smoked Adnan Rashid. Do you know one of the greatest defenders of this story? Someone who defended the story saying it has to be true because he says there are too many chains and versions for the story to be a lie. Did you know who defended it and tried to use it to prove that Muhammad is a prophet? Do you know who one of the greatest defenders of the Satanic versions happens to be? No, Shibir Ali, no. Anybody else? You need to listen to this. This is a nightmare. It's an embarrassment. Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. If you don't know who Ibn Taymiyyah is, Ibn Taymiyyah wrote about 700 years after, yeah, you got it, 700 years after death of Muhammad, and he's considered one of the greatest scholars by Salafi Muslims, such as Sheikh Asim al-Hakim, even, what's his name? Yasser Qadi loves him. Yasser Qadi loves him, but he disagrees with him. He actually argued there are too many chains, too many versions of the story to be fake. It must be true, and it actually proves that Muhammad is a prophet who's guarded. You see the warped logic? You see the sick logic? He argued this actually vindicates Muhammad. How? Notice that Gabriel came right away and rebuked him, saying that's from Satan. That is proof that Allah will always protect his prophet either from making a mistake or correct him after he makes a mistake, showing he's a true prophet. That was the logic of Ibn Taymiyyah. That was the logic of Ibn Taymiyyah. The fact that Muhammad admitted those verses were from Satan and that Gabriel rebuked him shows his honesty and shows that Allah will not allow him to be deceived, but will correct him. That was his logic. But I'm going to show you why that logic doesn't work. Okay, now that I gave you the background, and I'll show you the name of the book and the author in a minute. Now, brother, if you can send it to me, Divine Mercy, the High Flying Cranes. I know his name is, I think, Shahab Ahmed. He passed away shortly after the book, because I would love to copy and paste from the book and produce posts so you don't have to buy the book. Okay, now, never did we send a messenger or prophet before you, but when he did recite the revelation or narrated or spoke, Shaitan threw some falsehood in it. Now notice the lie. When Muhammad felt depressed for reciting verses from Satan, Allah has Satan comfort him, saying, don't worry about it, Muhammad. You're not the first one. You're not the first one. There hasn't been a prophet or a messenger before you that didn't make that mistake. Notice the lie. Every messenger and prophet was deceived, duped by Satan to narrate the words of Satan. So Muhammad isn't the first, nor was he, well, supposedly he's going to be the last, because last prophet. But Allah abolishes that which Shaitan throws in. Then Allah establishes his revelations. And Allah is all knower, all wise, that he may make what is thrown in by Shaitan a trial for those in whose hearts is a disease of hypocrisy and disbelief, and whose hearts are hardened. Now what it means is, Allah allowed, yep, that is it. You got it, brother. Shahab Ahmed. That's the book, brother. Okay, now listen to this, crystals. According to this, Allah allows Satan to inspire prophets and messengers to recite the words of Satan, thinking they're the words of God, and then God will then come and correct that mistake, inform them those are Satan's words, so that the people who heard those words will either get angry and turn away from the faith, or will be strengthened in their faith because they'll see, wow, so God made sure to protect you and reveal to you these verses from some Satan. See the logic of the Quran? See the logic of the Quran? Thank you, brother. Now I'm going to be quoting a lot of juicy quotes from the book. See how this brother is helping me to save money? Can you see it right there? Note, according to the Quran, to come from Muhammad, all the prophets and messengers made his mistake. They were all deceived in reciting Satan's words, unbeknownst to them, and then Allah came and revealed to them, those are not from me, they're from Satan, and removes those words. See the lie? And whose hearts are hardened. Certainly the Zalimun, polytheists, and wrongdoers are in opposition far off from the truth against Allah's messenger believers. Now, according to the Muslim commentators, why did Allah send down, chapter 22, verse 52, 53? Here you go. Tafsir al-jalalayn. Tafsir al-jalalayn. right here. I'm quoting, so no one thinks I'm lying. Let's see. You ready? Why was this sent down? Now remember, these are Muslims. They're not Christians. They're not Jews. They're Muslims. Why would they make up a story making Muhammad look so evil and stupid and compromised? And we did not send before any messenger Rasul that this is a prophet who's been commanded to deliver a message, or prophet Nabi, one who has not been commanded to deliver anything, but that when he recited the scripture, Satan cast into his recitation what is not from the Quran, but which those to whom he, the prophet, had been sent would find pleasing. See that? So Satan inspires a prophet to mix in the words of God with the words of Satan to please the unbelievers. The prophet had, during an assembly of the men of Quraysh, after reciting the following verses from Surah An-Najm, the chapter of the star, 53, have you considered Lat and Uzza, Manat, the third one, added as a result of Satan casting them onto his tongue without his, the prophets, being aware of it, the following words? So then Satan put on the tongue of Muhammad. Muhammad then repeated those words. So who took over Muhammad's tongue? Satan. Who inspired Muhammad's tongue? Satan. Who spoke the words of Satan? Muhammad. Okay. Those are the high-flying cranes, al-Qaranid, al-Ula, and indeed their intercession is to be hoped for. And so they, the men of Quraysh, were thereby delighted. Gabriel, however, later informed him, the prophet, of this, that Satan had cast unto his tongue, and he's grieved by it. What does this tell you about Muhammad? That Satan controlled Muhammad's mouth to then spew the words of Satan, with Muhammad being oblivious, thinking these are the words of God. But was subsequently comforted with the following verse, that he might be reassured of God's pleasure thereat. God abrogates, nullifies whatever Satan had cast, then God confirms his revelations. And God is knower of Satan's casting of that which has been mentioned, wise in his enabling him, Satan, to do such things, for he does whatever he will. Now, how about this one here? Tafsir al-Jalalayn in verse 53, that he may make what Satan has cast a trial, a test for those in whose hearts is a sickness, dissension, and hypocrisy, and those whose hearts are hardened, namely the idolaters, hardened against acceptance of the truth. For truly the evildoers, the disbelievers, are steeped in extreme defiance. Now watch. In a protracted feud, they were constantly fighting Muhammad, opposing Muhammad with the prophet and the believers, for his tongue, Muhammad's tongue, uttered mention of their gods in a way that pleased them, yet this was later nullified, which got them angry. They're like, wait, 1 minute you're praising our gods and our goddesses. Next minute, you're saying that was a mistake. Satan deceived you and our goddesses are evil. Make up your mind already. Why they're like upset and living with this guy? Make up your mind already, man. One day you praise our gods and goddesses. Next day you're telling us our gods and goddesses are false. Dude, we're getting fed up with you. See that?